It had been a long time since she had yelled up at my window that summer. That summer when I had the room with the window, down in the narrow alleys between the tall buildings, downtown, behind the Chronicle building where the drunks sing and the pigeons swarm and the men load the news onto trucks every morning, early. Summer when the sun never came out and the early headline was always about us bombing some new unexpected country, and it always seemed like a long time since she'd yelled up at my window. She stood in the alley smoking. "How come?" she said. "How come when I'd come to see you, my bike would always break?" I looked at her flat tire. "You should leave it here and come with me. We still play your favorite song." "Something always broke," she said. You could already hear the march echoing through downtown just a couple blocks away as it came up 5th Street. The flyer had said, "Emergency march to stop the bombing." The march was supposed to end at a rally at Civic Center where my band was going to play. Civic Center was one of the few places in town that summer where we had never gone on a date, or for that matter, had never stayed up all night deciding not to see each other anymore. We ran to catch up. The sun was out and the streets were filled for blocks and it looked good. Everybody was there. There were pissed off hip-hop kids from the Western Ad. The Good Vibes girls were there, looking tough as fuck, all in black. There were guys I knew from the Coalition on Homelessness. You know, guys who live in the park. Of course that one cop was there, that one who's at every demo. I swear, he's even in all of Jim's footage of protests from like 15 years ago. Presently, Juanita, from that storefront Latino drop-in center on Mission Street, all 4.5 feet of her, was yelling insults in Spanish up into his face. He didn't like it. I caught myself almost waving to him. After all, we've been marching together now for years.
You need to consider this.
We headed up 5th Street, up Powell Street, past the cable car turnaround, to Union Square, to yell at all the tourists shopping at Macy's.
Go shop! Shop some more!
The tourists hardly seemed in any way to know what we were talking about. Failing that, they hardly even seemed to feel threatened by us. Instead, they were excited. They turned their video cameras away from the gold man and the human statue and started filming us. You could almost see them back home telling everyone how they went to San Francisco and how they saw a real live anti-war demonstration. As we headed down to Market Street again, I found myself stuck behind the Mumio puppet, and I started to have that old sinking feeling. Still, the thing that I had always liked about being in a march was looking back at familiar buildings from the middle of a blocked-off carless street. The city seemed to come unstuck from its everydayness, and for a short time you could catch a glimpse of a whole different world laid over the top of it. Anything could seem possible. And suddenly everyone was running. The cops didn't want us to go onto Market Street and were trying to get us to go off into a side street.
Not difficult to understand, people. Not too difficult to understand.
But there were too many of us and they were taken by surprise. The crowd surged onto Market as cops tried to run ahead, and everything was eerily silent except for the crackling of cop radios. In the push of the crowd, me and her were laughing and losing balance like when we used to ride double together, drunk. She said, "Hey, remember when we got kicked off that roof in the Mission and we had to run from the cops?" It was like the old days, suddenly. She had this look in her eye I hadn't seen in a while, and she was smiling with her mouth slightly open, like someone waiting for a first kiss. I thought of fires in the middle of Market Street during the Gulf War protest. I thought of burning cop cars and old pictures of Dan White riots. A different world. Would this finally be the march where we took over Macy's, where we ran in and said, "No, you can't just shop while these bombs fall in other countries. It has to stop"? Would this be the march that ended up more like what we fucking felt? Well, no. The cops let us have Market Street, and soon we arrived at Civic Center at the scheduled event.
Can the marshals at the demonstration please come to the stage? And if everybody can reach down and pick up a piece of garbage or a banner or a flyer or a leaflet and throw it in the garbage, it'll make this place look great. Thank you.
Instantly, an army of weird old guys covered in protest buttons fanned out and started trying to sell their shitty newspapers. Everyone started passing out flyers for next week's emergency protest. The perennial socialist losing candidate for mayor took the stage and started addressing the crowd through a bullhorn, saying, "Send a message to City Hall. Vote for me in November," while her supporters asked for campaign donations, passing the hat for spare change like the gold man or the human statue. We were supposed to play first. I thought maybe we could keep the energy going.
I'm sorry, but we have another speaker right now. I'm very sorry.
But then some horrible hippie ran up and stole our spot.
As Bob Dylan said way back then, if you're going to live outside the law, you must be honest.
When will this shit end?
1955, a handful of beatniks.
Finally, we got to play.
Chief Tragedy, the Avengers cover song.
First song, we broke all the strings and drums. NATO bombed my bass pedal, I yelled, holding up the two halves for the dwindling crowd. We fought off more speakers while we fixed everything. Then, our singer introduced the second song by telling the Marxists to leave us alone. The crowd roared and applauded. So of course, in our third song, the Avengers cover, the power mysteriously got pulled on us. I kept playing the drums and singing as loud as possible, all the way to the end of the song anyway, but that was it. We were purged. The sound guy was packing it up. He said, "Look, the cops have been real good about not shutting this down, so, we should just call it quits before it's too late, don't you think?" It's always the sound guy. He must have been COINTELPRO. I said, "With friends like you, who needs the cops?" He said, "Hey man, that hurts." He was a hippie sound guy. A wave of fog was crossing Twin Peaks in the distance, coming down Market. The day had almost imperceptibly darkened. People went their separate ways. The only people left in the plaza were the last of the crowd that was still hoping to get arrested, and the people trying to sell them papers. And of course that one cop. She stood there on the grass smoking. She said, "I should go. I should get my bike." I thought of a summer with no sun, and a sound guy with no sound, and a Stop the Bombing March that didn't even try. I thought of a room with a window in a narrow alley where the drunks sang and the pigeons swarmed and the men loaded the news onto trucks. I said, "I'll help you fix your flat, so you can go home."